baby, sing Mama's favorite song.
Shake your booty on the...
There were rumors of strife on the set.
Brandy would say the Countess said bad things to her in front of people. It was because we were teenagers.
The reason why I have image problems is because of that happened to me as a child.
We all loved Kim Parker from The Parkers. Here's what happened to her. While audiences were laughing at her character's antics, Countess Vaughn was dealing with an abusive relationship that left her face unrecognizable.
Before I started using Lady Egyptian, my husband was about to leave me. I couldn't have kids and the bank repossessed my...
Her co-star wouldn't speak to her off camera. The network was threatening to fire her over her appearance. And the childhood fame that made her a star was the same thing destroying her mental health.
Because I don't want to be the victim anymore.
Thank you.
I don't want to be the whiner. I want to own up to my and fix it.
Countess Vaughn was just a woman trying to survive the industry that built her up as a child and abandoned her as an adult. So what happened to her? Countess Vaughn showed up to the Parker set every day for 5 seasons, knowing her co-star Monique wouldn't speak to her unless cameras were rolling. The tension between them wasn't subtle. Everyone on set could feel it. Cast members would watch Monique and Vaughn deliver their scenes perfectly, laughing and hugging as Kim and Nikki Parker, then walk in opposite directions the moment someone yelled, "Cut."
Someone cut you off in traffic, would you add?
I'd run him off the road, yank him out the car through the window, and beat him.
The problem started early in the show's run. Vaughn had played Kim Parker on Moesha first, establishing the character before the Parkers became its own series. When the spin-off happened, Vaughn expected to be treated as an equal lead alongside Monique. That's not how Monique saw it. Monique viewed the Parkers as her show, with Vaughn as a supporting player who should be grateful for the opportunity. The dynamic created constant friction. Vaughn would suggest ideas for scenes or storylines involving Kim. Monique would shut them down or ignore them completely. Production meetings became uncomfortable as the two actresses avoided sitting near each other or acknowledging each other's presence unless absolutely necessary. Other cast members tried to stay neutral. Jenna Von Oy, who played Stevie, found herself caught between the two leads, trying to maintain friendships with both while the set became increasingly divided. Dorian Wilson and Ken Lawson dealt with the tension by focusing on their own work and staying out of whatever was happening between the show's stars. The silence off camera made filming difficult in ways that audiences never saw. Rehearsals required both actresses to be present and engaged. When Monique and Vaughn weren't speaking, directors had to communicate with them separately about scenes they'd be performing together. The inefficiency slowed production and frustrated everyone involved. Vaughn later talked publicly about feeling isolated on the Parkers set. She described arriving at work knowing she wouldn't have friendly conversations with her co-star.
And I didn't want to be outside as an actress having to explain all the time.
The professional coldness extended beyond just Monique ignoring Vaughn. It created an environment where Vaughn felt unwelcome in a show that was supposed to be partly hers. Monique's star power was growing during the Parkers' run. She was getting movie roles and comedy specials. The more successful Monique became outside the show, the more the power dynamic shifted in her favor on set. Vaughn couldn't challenge her without risking her own position on the series.
Now, what sorority do you want Mama to join?
Ooh, I want to...
The feud never became a major public scandal while the show was on the air. Both actresses maintained professionalism during press appearances and interviews. They smiled for photos together and said positive things about working on the Parkers. But people who worked on the show knew the truth. The friendship between Kim and Nikki Parker was fiction. The actresses playing them could barely stand to be in the same room. While Vaughn was dealing with Monique's silent treatment at work, her personal life was becoming a nightmare that would eventually show up on her face in ways she couldn't hide. Countess Vaughn met David Whitten during the Parkers' run. He seemed charming at first, attentive, and interested in her life beyond being Kim Parker. The relationship moved quickly from dating to serious, to Whitten essentially controlling every aspect of Vaughn's existence. The abuse started gradually. Whitten would criticize Vaughn's appearance or her career choices. He'd accuse her of being unfaithful when she was at work. The verbal attacks escalated to physical violence that Vaughn tried to hide from everyone she worked with. Vaughn would show up to the Parker set with injuries covered by makeup and long sleeves. She'd blame accidents or clumsiness when people noticed bruises. The isolation she already felt because of Monique's treatment made it easier for Whitten to control her. Vaughn didn't have strong support systems on set to notice what was happening or intervene. The violence got worse. Whitten's attacks became more frequent and more severe. Vaughn lived in constant fear of setting him off, walking on eggshells in her own home. The stress affected her work, but she couldn't explain why she seemed distracted or upset during filming. The worst incident happened when Whitten attacked Vaughn's face. The beating was so severe that Vaughn's appearance changed noticeably. Her face swelled. Bruising spread across areas that makeup couldn't fully cover. The damage was impossible to hide from the cast and crew who saw her every day.
Constantly battled with wanting to change myself.
Production on the Parkers had to work around Vaughn's injuries. They adjusted lighting to minimize how obvious the damage was. They rescheduled scenes to give her face time to heal. But the incident created a problem that went beyond just logistics. People were asking questions that Vaughn wasn't ready to answer. Vaughn tried to maintain the fiction that nothing was wrong. She gave excuses about allergic reactions or minor accidents. But the severity of her injuries made those explanations increasingly unbelievable. Cast members who'd maintained distance because of the Monique situation started reaching out to Vaughn with genuine concern. The network became involved when it was clear Vaughn's appearance was affecting her ability to work. They didn't approach it from a place of concern for her safety. They approached it as a production problem that needed solving. The pressure on Vaughn intensified from multiple directions as she tried to keep her relationship with Whitten private while managing a situation that was becoming very public. And while she was dealing with abuse at home, the network was preparing to deliver another blow that would make everything worse. The Parkers was in its third season when UPN executives called Countess Vaughn into a meeting. They told her that her weight was becoming a problem for the show. Kim Parker was supposed to be the cute, stylish college girl. Vaughn's body, in the network's view, no longer fit that image. They gave her an ultimatum: lose weight or risk being written out of the series.
And how you're looked at as a product. You know, is it dressy enough? Is it cute enough? Is it, you never feel good enough.
Vaughn was already dealing with the abuse from David Whitten and the hostile work environment created by Monique's silence. Now the network was telling her that her physical appearance wasn't acceptable. The pressure came from every direction simultaneously, with no escape. The weight comments weren't new.
It just wasn't cool. One of the characters not liking me because I was fat.
Vaughn had heard whispers about her size from costume designers and producers throughout the Parkers' run. But the official meeting made it clear this wasn't just gossip. The network was serious about potentially firing her if she didn't conform to their standards. The stress of trying to meet everyone's demands while maintaining the appearance that everything was fine eventually led Vaughn to make a decision that would change her face permanently. Countess Vaughn decided to get cosmetic surgery during the Parkers' run. The decision came from years of pressure about her appearance, from the network, from Whitten, and from her own insecurities developed during a lifetime in entertainment. She wanted to fix whatever was wrong with her face that made people criticize it constantly. Vaughn got cheek implants and other facial procedures. Something went wrong during the surgery or the healing process. Her face changed in ways that weren't natural or attractive. The implants were visible under her skin. Her facial structure looked distorted compared to how she'd appeared in earlier seasons. The changes were obvious to everyone who watched The Parkers. Audiences noticed immediately that Kim Parker looked different.
Mama, we're rehearsing.
Yeah, Kim and I joined T's band.
We're the new team.
Vaughn tried to hide the extent of the damage. She adjusted her hair and makeup to minimize how noticeable the implants were. Lighting technicians on the Parkers worked to shoot her from angles that were more flattering. But there was no hiding that something had gone seriously wrong. The botched surgery added another layer to Vaughn's deteriorating relationship with UPN. The network had pressured her about her weight. Now her face looked strange because of procedures she'd gotten, partly because of that pressure. The network's response wasn't sympathy. It was more concern about how her appearance affected the Parkers' image. Monique's continued silence during this period made the situation more painful for Vaughn. She was dealing with a very public change to her appearance that people were mocking online and in tabloids. Her co-star still wouldn't offer support or even acknowledge what was happening.
I've constantly battled with wanting to change myself because of others' opinions. It had a lot to do with me being in this business, entertainment business.
Vaughn later revealed that she'd gotten the surgery partly because of Witten's constant criticism of her looks. He'd told her repeatedly that she wasn't pretty enough, that she needed to fix her face. The botched procedures that resulted from trying to please an abusive man became permanent reminders of that period in her life. The surgery affected how Vaughn was perceived in Hollywood beyond just the Parkers. Casting directors who might have considered her for roles saw the changed face and moved on to other actresses. Her appearance, which had already been a source of pressure and criticism, became a barrier to future work. And while Vaughn was dealing with the fallout from her surgery, her history with another sitcom was creating problems that would follow her for years. Countess Vaughn had played Kim Parker on Moesha before the Parkers existed. Her time on Moesha established the character and made her popular enough to warrant a spin-off. But the transition from Moesha to the Parkers wasn't smooth, and the baggage from that earlier show followed Vaughn in ways that complicated her career. On Moesha, Vaughn had been a supporting character in Brandy's show. Kim Parker was the comic relief, the spoiled friend whose problems were never as important as what Moesha was dealing with.
Ooh, Ashley, your hair and your dress is cute. You just altered it cute. Thanks. I wish I could
When the Parkers made Kim a lead character, some people in the industry questioned whether Vaughn could carry a show. She was moving from supporting player to co-lead, and not everyone believed she had the range or star power to make that jump successfully. The relationship between Brandy and Vaughn had been professional, but not warm. They weren't friends off camera. When the Parkers started, Brandy's absence from Vaughn's new show was noticeable. Crossover episodes were discussed, but never materialized, partly because the two actresses weren't interested in working together again. Vaughn also carried tension from her time on Moesha regarding how she was perceived by Black audiences. Kim Parker was written as materialistic and somewhat vapid. Some viewers felt the character reinforced negative stereotypes, and Vaughn faced criticism for playing into those tropes. The criticism followed her to the Parkers, where Kim remained largely the same character.
There were rumors of strife on the set.
Brandy would say the Countess said bad things during front.
The typecasting became a problem when Vaughn tried to get work outside the Parkers. Casting directors only saw her as Kim Parker, the superficial girl obsessed with boys and fashion. She auditioned for dramatic roles and couldn't book them because nobody could see past the character she'd played since she was a teenager. Vaughn's history as a child star compounded the typecasting issues. She'd been on television since she was young, competing on Star Search and appearing on various shows before landing Moesha. The industry had watched her grow up on screen, and many people couldn't separate Countess Vaughn the actress from the roles she'd played as a kid. The Moesha connection also affected how Vaughn was treated in salary negotiations for the Parkers. She wasn't coming in as a fresh face with leverage. She was continuing a character from another show, which the network used to justify paying her less than she might have earned otherwise. The spin-off that should have been her big break came with built-in limitations because of her history. By the time The Parkers was in its final seasons, Vaughn was desperate to move beyond Kim Parker. But 15 years of playing variations on the same character had defined her so completely that escape seemed impossible. While she struggled with typecasting and the aftermath of her botched surgery, the physical damage to her face was becoming something she could no longer ignore or hide. The botched cheek implants didn't heal properly. Countess Vaughn tried multiple corrective procedures to fix what the original surgery had done to her face. Each attempt to repair the damage seemed to make things worse or create new problems. Her face became a source of constant pain and self-consciousness that affected every aspect of her life. Vaughn dealt with physical discomfort from the implants. They shifted under her skin. They created pressure points that caused headaches and facial pain. Simply existing in her own face became uncomfortable in ways that most people never experience. The psychological damage was worse than the physical. Vaughn looked in mirrors and saw someone she didn't recognize. The face staring back at her was distorted by procedures she'd gotten because other people told her she wasn't good enough. Every glance at her reflection reminded her of David Witten's abuse, UPN's weight ultimatums, and the years of criticism about her appearance.
I've constantly battled with wanting to change myself because of others' opinions. It had a lot to do with me being in this business, entertainment business.
Vaughn tried to get the implants removed. She consulted with multiple surgeons about reversing the damage. Some told her removal would leave her face looking worse than it already did. Others said they could improve things, but couldn't promise she'd look like herself again. She was stuck with a face she hated because fixing it might make it worse. The Parkers ended in 2004, and Vaughn struggled to find work afterward. Casting directors saw her changed face and moved on to other actresses. The botched surgery that was supposed to make her more employable had instead destroyed her ability to book roles. She'd sacrificed her natural appearance, trying to meet Hollywood's standards, and lost her career in the process. Vaughn became increasingly isolated as she dealt with the aftermath. The friendships she might have had with former cast members didn't exist because of the tensions during the Parkers. A relationship with Witten had cut her off from other support systems. She was alone with a face she couldn't fix and a career that had evaporated. The internet made everything worse. Photos of Vaughn's face circulated online with cruel commentary. Blogs and forums dedicated space to mocking how she looked. People who'd loved Kim Parker on The Parkers now used Countess Vaughn as a cautionary tale about plastic surgery gone wrong. Vaughn tried to stay out of the public eye while she figured out how to live with her new reality. She avoided events and interviews where cameras would capture her changed appearance. The actress who'd spent her life in front of audiences was now hiding because she couldn't stand for people to see her face. While Vaughn was dealing with the physical and emotional aftermath of her surgery, her history as a child star was creating problems that explained why she'd been vulnerable to all this pressure in the first place. The Parkers was canceled in 2004 after 5 seasons. For Countess Vaughn, the cancellation meant losing the steady income that had sustained her since she was a teenager. She'd been working consistently from Star Search through Moesha through the Parkers. Suddenly, she was unemployed with a face she couldn't fix and a reputation in Hollywood that made booking new work nearly impossible.
And how you're looked at as a product. You know, is it dressy enough? Is it cute enough? Is it, you never feel good enough.
Vaughn auditioned for roles, but couldn't land anything substantial. Casting directors still only saw her as Kim Parker. The botched surgery made her less attractive to producers who wanted conventional beauty. She was caught between being too associated with one character and too visibly damaged by plastic surgery to be cast as anything else. Financial problems followed quickly. Vaughn had been earning a television salary for years, but hadn't saved enough to sustain long periods of unemployment. The money disappeared faster than she expected, and suddenly she was dealing with poverty after years of relative financial stability. Her relationship with David Witten finally ended, but the damage he'd done to her physically and psychologically remained. Vaughn was left trying to rebuild her life while dealing with trauma that affected everything from how she viewed herself to how she interacted with potential romantic partners. Vaughn eventually started speaking publicly about her experiences.
The reason why I have image problems is because of that happened to me as a child.
The honesty was therapeutic, but also opened her up to new criticism from people who questioned her timing or her motives for discussing her past publicly. She tried reality television as a way to stay visible and earn income. Vaughn appeared on shows like Celebrity Fit Club and Hollywood Divas. The reality TV appearances helped financially, but also meant exposing herself to audiences who remembered Kim Parker and wanted to comment on how much Countess Vaughn had changed. Vaughn also started talking about her issues with Monique, finally making public what people who worked on the Parkers already knew. The revelation that the two stars hadn't gotten along created new headlines, but didn't repair the relationship. Monique's career had continued rising while Vaughn struggled, which made the power dynamic even more unbalanced. She had children and focused on motherhood as a source of identity beyond acting. But the financial struggles continued as Vaughn tried to provide for her kids while dealing with limited job prospects and the lingering effects of years of trauma and abuse. Vaughn's attempts to revive her career included small roles in low-budget productions and appearances at nostalgia events where fans of the Parkers could meet the actress who'd played Kim. The work was inconsistent and often poorly paid, but it was something. She took what was available because being too selective wasn't an option anymore. She eventually got additional procedures to try to fix her face, finding surgeons willing to attempt repairs that previous doctors had said were impossible. The results were mixed. She looked better than at her worst, but she'd never looked like she had before the original botched surgery. That version of her face was gone permanently. Vaughn continued working on her mental health, processing the child stardom trauma, the domestic abuse, and the professional struggles that had defined her adult life. The work was ongoing because healing from that much accumulated damage doesn't happen quickly or completely. She remained connected to her faith as a source of strength during periods when everything else seemed to be falling apart. That spiritual foundation became increasingly important as Vaughn dealt with the reality that her career might never recover to where it had been during the Parkers' heyday. By 2025, Countess Vaughn was still trying to find her place in an industry that had chewed her up and spit her out. She was surviving rather than thriving, working on herself and her relationships with her children, while hoping for opportunities that might never come. The woman who'd made millions laugh as Kim Parker was now just trying to make it through each day with her sense of self intact, which turned out to be harder than any role she'd ever played. Anyway, that's it for the video, folks. Bye.